good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to SICW 2020 Women in Cyber. Stay tuned as our live stream will begin at 5 p.m. This session will include a question and answer session. Take this opportunity to interact with the speakers live. Submit your questions in the Q&A engagement panel on the right of your screen. Should you require any technical assistance, click on the chat icon on the bottom right of the screen and chat with our live support. A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the SICW 2020 Women in Cyber. My name is Juliana Yao, and I am privileged to be your MC for today. First and foremost, I would like to thank everyone for finding time, despite your busy schedule, to attend this event. This is the second edition of the SICW Women in Cyber event, and the theme of this year's event is Diversity in Cybersecurity under the New Normal. The event aims to reaffirm the international efforts by both the private and public sector to increase the cybersecurity talent pipeline. Amid the impacts of COVID-19 on jobs and the economy, Women in Cyber also aims to signal the continued availability of good jobs in the cybersecurity industry for both men and women. Two panel discussions on the topics of, firstly, impact of COVID-19 on cybersecurity, and secondly, cybersecurity and the next generation will be held and will comprise sharing by women leaders and cybersecurity practitioners from various countries. To begin the conference, it gives me great pleasure to invite Senior Minister of State, Ministry of Communications and Information, Ms. Sim Ann, to deliver the opening address. Ms. Sim, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, greetings to everyone. Whatever time zone you might be in, let me warmly welcome you to our first virtual Singapore International Cyber Week, or SICW for short. I'm delighted to say that women have enjoyed a prominent place on the agenda at SICW. Over the past month, a series of events were co-organized between the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, or CSA, and community partners in Singapore to celebrate and promote women in cybersecurity as part of the SG Cyber Women Act series. These include webinars on cybersecurity, career talks, and even a virtual Capture the Flag competition. I hear that many enjoyed the events and told us they will continue to support our efforts in promoting women in cyber. Today's Women in Cyber event concludes the series with all of you, our international friends. Held in conjunction with SICW, today's event is co-organized by the High Commission of Canada, the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and CSA. It is fitting that we come together across countries to learn from one another and exchange ideas on how to capitalize on digital and cybersecurity opportunities for everyone. The digital world is borderless after all. COVID-19 has forced us all to adapt to a new normal in a very short time. I remember vividly delivering the keynote address at the inaugural Women in Cyber event just last year to a large room full of women and men who support women. None of us in that room could have predicted that this year's event would look like this. Still, I'm sure that many of you can see silver linings in the situation. For example, this virtual format allows us to reach participants who may not have been able to attend in person. We are leveraging digitalization to connect, whether across town or across continents. We used to think of digitalization as the pathway to greater convenience and better service quality. This remains true, but in a pandemic, digitalization means business continuity, and business continuity means survival. I'm proud that our businesses and workers have demonstrated incredible adaptability and resilience. Like many around the world, our citizens stepped up to the challenge and quickly adapted to new digital ways to live, work, and play. At the same time, accelerated and increased reliance on digitalization is not without risk. Cyber threats are growing in scale and sophistication worldwide. A recent study by CrowdStrike regarding threat activity on their customer networks showed more intrusion attempts in the first 6 months of this year than in all of 2019 combined. Cyber criminals are determined and opportunistic. They will target the vulnerable among us, whether they are big organizations, small businesses, or individuals like you and me. We must be equipped to tackle these threats. Making this digital leap can be daunting. That is why Singapore launched the SG Digital Office earlier this year. The office strives to equip every individual and business with digital tools and skills to participate meaningfully in this new normal. In particular, the office supports seniors and micro enterprises like owners of small food stalls in taking the first step on their digitalization journey safely and securely. CSA also continues to work with the Ministry of Education to conduct outreach through schools. These aim to cultivate good cyber hygiene practices among our youth. That is what digital inclusion really is about, not just technological accessibility, but ensuring that everyone has the confidence, skills, and knowledge to navigate the digital domain safely and securely. There is one more silver lining to the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite global economic contraction and unemployment, the tech industry and global cybersecurity market are expected to grow. These present good career opportunities. Cybersecurity roles offer meaningful work, good career progression, and lend themselves to flexible working arrangements. These are particularly beneficial for workers who need to juggle family and work obligations. Despite these good prospects, many perceive cybersecurity or other tech-related jobs as inaccessible. For example, it is generally acknowledged that there is global underrepresentation of women in tech. This is something we should work to overcome. Already, many capable women are trailblazers in the industry. Just last month, Singapore published a list of 100 women who made outstanding contributions in tech. Our panelists today are also among the many capable individuals who have excelled in their fields. What we want is to see many more women having the opportunity to follow these trailblazers in pursuing meaningful, fulfilling careers in tech. And this includes cybersecurity too. Singapore has ramped up our efforts to support our workforce to take advantage of the many opportunities available. For example, the SG United Jobs and Skills Package provides access to placement and training opportunities, even in the current bleak economic climate. To grow the pool of professionals who can capitalize on opportunities in the cyber industry, CSA launched the SG Cyber Talent Initiative earlier this year. This aims to reach out to at least 20,000 individuals over 3 years to encourage them to embark on and advance their journey in cybersecurity. At last year's Women in Cyber event, several students participated and spoke about their experience. They and others cited teachers as major influences on their career pathways. To acknowledge their importance, CSA will be introducing an SG Cyber Educators program to engage with and grow the pool of passionate educators knowledgeable about the cybersecurity industry. We hope that these educators can inspire their students to consider a cybersecurity career. Even better, perhaps this passion could inspire their parents who may be considering a mid-career switch too. These educators could also help to foster stronger collaboration between academia and industry. Ultimately, we hope that this initiative will help to mold more passionate cybersecurity graduates with good grounding and industry-ready skill sets ready to capitalize on the many opportunities in the industry. More details on the initiative will be shared at the inaugural virtual Singapore Cybersecurity Education Symposium next month. The past few months have been tough for many, and we will feel the effects of the pandemic for a while longer. Nonetheless, I'm heartened to see the many initiatives and community efforts around the world in promoting digital and cybersecurity opportunities for all. This will allow us to harness the opportunities that have emerged from this new normal and help us bounce back from this crisis stronger. Let me wish you all a fruitful session ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sim. Ladies and gentlemen, next we have our first panel discussion for the day, Impact of COVID-19 on Cybersecurity. Welcoming our moderator, Ms. Teo E. Ling, Senior Fellow, Center of Excellence for National Security, S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies, Singapore. Ms. Teo is also part of the Cyber and Homeland Defense Program and is engaged in researching strategies of national cybersecurity resilience, data protection and governance regimes, online regulation regimes, and ethics and governance related to artificial intelligence and disruptive technology. She is also a qualified barrister at law and an advocate and solicitor, and has practice experience with international and local law firms in the areas of intellectual property, technology, media and entertainment, and commercial law. Over to you, Ms. Teo.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Women in Cyber panel on the topic of impact of COVID-19 on cybersecurity. We have with us today 4 distinguished and inspiring women who are professionally engaged in different capacities in cybersecurity. They have graciously given up their time to share with us their observations and experience in meeting the challenges thrown up by the ongoing pandemic. Allow me to introduce Ms. Tammy Tham, CEO of Ensign Info Security, Superintendent Connie Seek, Head of the Technology Crime Investigation Branch of the Singapore Police Force, Ms. Nathalie Jaarsma, Ambassador at Large for Security Policy and Cyber, Kingdom of the Netherlands, and Ms. Nicola Hudson, Director of Policy and Communications at National Cyber Security Centre, United Kingdom. In unpacking our panel topics, our speakers will each be responding to these following questions. Firstly, what are the changes you have observed in the cyber threat landscape with regard to cybersecurity vulnerabilities since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic? Are such changes temporary or for the medium or long term? Secondly, what responses have been mounted to these changes? What has worked and what still needs improvement? And the third question, the saying goes that every crisis brings with it opportunities. What, in your opinion, are the opportunities within the cybersecurity landscape that this pandemic has created? So to start us off, I'd like to invite Ms. Tammy Tham to address us first. Tammy, please.
Right, thank you. Thanks for having me. Good afternoon to all. So it's my pleasure to share my thoughts. So firstly, in terms of observation, well, I think this pandemic has definitely accelerated a pace of digital transformation in businesses. So what we're seeing, companies are moving more of the data and work processes online, and they are allowing these data and processes to be accessed remotely to facilitate work from home arrangements. Now, these measures, if they're not implemented correctly with adequate security controls, now that's going to be a problem, right? They obviously have led to an increase in the risk of data breaches. So in Ensign, even our threat researchers have noticed an increase in related cybersecurity incidents. And all the findings were published in our recent Threat Insights report. So you may ask, what are the causes? Well, there's this unplanned expansion of digital attack surface due to remote working. And as you can imagine, most employees do not have comparable security measures at home compared to the office environment. So that's the problem, right? There's also this mad rush to enable remote working by deploying cloud-based solutions. Now, how do we know that these solutions have been properly configured, right? If they are not, then we're leaving the organizations further exposed. Now, what we're seeing is a lot of organizations, they have prioritized the enablement of remote working solutions over security. Now, I can understand that, right? Typically, it's a mission critical nature of the situation, but thereby exposing them to greater risk if they don't, take care of security, right? So from a threat-centric perspective, what we observe in Ensign are the following, right? COVID-19 themed phishing attacks, which started in March this year in 2020. And then by April, we saw the frequency of attacks surge by more than 100 times as the threat actors obviously capitalized on the COVID-19 situation to advance their interest. Now, compared to the same period last year, there's an increase in phishing attacks across all sectors in Singapore, right? And the COVID-19 theme attacks accounted for most of the increase. And threat actors are obviously exploiting the people's eagerness to get COVID-19 related advice and information to click on the malicious attachment and links in the email. I think our observations are further corroborated by other reports. And in Singapore, our Singapore Police Force have reported that almost 30 times increase in phishing cases, right, that were lodged with them in the first half of this year compared to the same period last year. And there's similar statistics from CSA that says that there are 3 times more increase in phishing cases targeting companies from March and May this year alone compared to the preceding 3 months. So what does it tell you, right? The attacks are real, the risks are very real. But what about the pandemic? I think it's going to blow over. I think the pandemic, it's just going to be temporary. So that's the optimist side of me, right? But I think the lessons learned will persist, and I want them to persist. a lot of companies are pushing for digital transformation and remote working arrangement. Look, what's happening in my own office, my people are refusing to come back to the office. I mean, they're so used to working from home for the past 7-8 months. So how do we get them back, right? So I think there's going to be this new normal, right? And enterprises also do not want to be caught in the same conundrum in the event if there's another pandemic, right? So working from home, it's going to be the new norm, as well as digital transformation. Now, obviously, there are risks associated with digital transformation, like what I've said, and it will continue to be a concern, right, unless the companies are doing the right things. So what is the right thing, right? I believe in security by design principles, and that is important, and you have to follow that in your course of your business. So those are the observations, but what are the responses that we have seen, and what has worked, and what are the improvements? Well, in the wake of the various COVID-19 measures, in Singapore in particular, we have got circuit breaker, CB, and then we have got phase 2, and now we are kind of in phase 2A and B, right, kind of thing. What we saw are a lot of IT teams scrambled to deploy technology solutions to enable telecommuting, right? So unfortunately, security was often an afterthought due to the short lead time that was given to them, right? We have seen our clients provisioning new VPN access without two-factor authentication. And we have seen them making changes to access control to allow remote access. And this has inevitably opened up other unintended loopholes. And look at a traditional enterprise security control, right? Like you have a network firewall, you have IPSs, you have proxy, and so on and so forth. And these are not intended for laptops and computing devices that are, and these devices are being in employees' homes. So all these controls are lacking today, right? So because of all these things, it allowed the cyber attackers a window of opportunity, in my opinion, right, to exploit the gaps in your organization. So of course, the organization understand this, and with the increased awareness of the issue, so what they're doing is they try to remediate, right? They try to start patching up the gaps that resulted from this very sloppy and hasty rollout of solutions during the early days of the pandemic. Now, directions are good, but they are reactive and they are tactical in nature most of the time, right? They do not take into account a more holistic view of the organization's evolving security strategy and needs. Yeah, so that's my opinion. So, you know, it's not unexpected, right? It's understandable given that the time pressure and the resource constraint that the companies are facing during this period. But I think more can be done, right? So some of the suggestions, I think they should be performing adequate risk assessment before adopting any remote working solutions, right? So take, for example, you do vulnerability assessments or penetration testing to identify the potential security issues with the chosen security solutions. And then what is very important is to improve and constantly improve the security awareness of the employees, right? And this is so that, you know, by conducting phishing simulation exercise, this is so that you can enhance the employees' resilience to such attacks, right? They'll be better educated against this sort of phishing attacks. And I think equally important is also a review of the security controls on the endpoints that have access to the organization's data and resources. That bit is important. And lastly, right, for the companies that are lacking the resources and the people to help them, I think they should just outsource to a security operations provider, an MSSP, like Ensign. So, so if you were to ask me, right, I also believe that in every crisis, it brings opportunities, right? In my opinion, I think this is the best time for the cyber industry, right? The pandemic has led to an accelerated digital transformation across SMBs, large organizations, as well as the government agencies. So beyond what I've just said about remote working and so on and so forth, we also saw, right, a surge in e-commerce transactions and more rapid adoption of IoT to increase productivity, right? These are opportunities because what is common amongst or across these trends is the increase in the risk of data and system breaches, right? And the awareness of this risk. So our clients are better informed today. They know the risks are there. So they ask for, you know, they have stronger demands. They ask for stronger cyber defenses against this risk. So which is why I said this is the best time for the cybersecurity industry. My heart goes out to the aviation and hospitality sectors, right? But for cyber, this is boom time for us. And because of the risk and because of the heightened awareness, right, inevitably it piled on the pressure of the industry to up our game. I think we have to really up our game, right? Building the talent pipeline and respond to the call to reskill the workforce. And we have to continue to invest in R&D, if you ask me, right, to come up with solutions to counter the hard problems. So what is difficult, right? The perennial problems of detecting and mitigating sophisticated threats. And automating some of the security operations. I think these are good opportunities for us. And more important is really to foster a closer cooperation among the users, the clients, the providers, as well as the regulators, right? So I look at all those things very positively. I think they are key drivers for us to get a dynamic and a very vibrant industry that is driven by innovation and the common goal, right? What is it? It's really to thwart the cyber threats, right? In my opinion, I think we should take advantage of all these opportunities so that we can bring the industry together, bring it to the next level, and let's be ready for the future. So that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tammy. Sounds like a call to arms, and those numbers you were actually sharing with us were actually quite scary. The 100x, 30x and 3x. I mean, yeah, I knew it was an issue, but I didn't know it was so exacerbated. So next, could we have Superintendent Connie Seek to share her views? Connie, please.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Tammy, for the insightful sharing earlier. So once again, thank you to CSA as well for inviting me to this event. So I will be sharing my thoughts from a law enforcement agency's perspective. And what you're going to hear, you will actually find that there'll be some overlaps with what Tammy has talked about earlier. So in terms of observation about what the pandemic has brought about to the cyber landscape in Singapore, well, in general, there is an increase in the number of cybercrime reported in Singapore from January to June this year. Well, this is not unique to Singapore, and the same trend is actually observed globally. In particular for Singapore, when we enter and implement the circuit breaker measures, we have to adopt remote working and home-based learning arrangements. And this actually eventually increases our online footprint tremendously, and consequently increases opportunities for cyber criminals to target their next victims. So what we have seen here is that bank-related phishing cases, social media impersonation scams, and e-commerce scams had the biggest increase in the first half of this year. Well, this is because cyber criminals exploit the fear and uncertainty caused by the unstable social and economic situation created by the pandemic. So we have victims who were actually tricked into disclosing their internet banking usernames, personal identification numbers, and one-time password to scammers who pose as bank staff. And platforms like IMO, Viber, WhatsApp were commonly used by scammers to communicate with their victims. There were also instances where scammers impersonate as staff from the Ministry of Health or the police, alleging that victims' credit card was used to make bulk purchases of COVID-19 medicine, and the victim will be coerced into revealing their online banking credentials and personal information in order to assist with investigation. Other than scam cases, we also observe an increase in phishing incidents where scammers impersonate as government officials to send emails to members of public to invite them to share their thoughts on the pandemic and fish for their personal information in the process. Home-based learning lessons were also intruded to disrupt lessons and to broadcast objectionable contents to the students. Well, what we do think is that a lot of these cases could have been prevented if the victims could practice more vigilance and safeguard their personal details, such as their banking details, one-time password, and their national registration identity card details. Well, what we think is that cyber criminals will still continue to find opportunities to evolve their tactics even after the pandemic is over. So if you're interested to find out more about this cyber landscape and how it has been affected by the pandemic, you can actually look up the Singapore Cyber Landscape 2019 report that was just released in June this year, it has a section on that talks about insights and the threats that have actually capitalized on the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, moving on to the second question that Yi-Ling has actually talked about earlier. Well, cybercrime and cybersecurity are actually closely intertwined, and close partnership between police and the cybersecurity agencies have proved to be useful and crucial in the sharing of information in order for us to solve and prevent further cases from happening. SyncCert will also assist police to facilitate takedown requests for websites that have been established to be in breach of crimes. Well, I think we all know that cybersecurity requires a whole of government approach, and each government agency has a role to play. For example, using the home-based learning incidents that has actually took place earlier this year, the Ministry of Education actually took quick steps to work with Zoom to put in measures to centrally manage the security setting of Zoom accounts and restrict the use of certain Zoom features while conducting remote teaching. Police also work closely with the Ministry of Education to disseminate messages to students as well as the parents to let them know about the importance of safeguarding their Google Meet, their Zoom meeting IDs and password as well. We also leverage resources from other internal and external stakeholders as well to disrupt modus operandi, intercept fraudulent fund transfers, preserve evidence, and even take down fake websites and accounts as well. Our crime prevention messages are disseminated in different languages in order to reach out to various vulnerable groups through our partners as well as on online platforms. Mainstream and social media continue to be an important avenue for us to issue our advisories, including cross-sharing of social media advisory posts across the government agencies. So, well, in terms of opportunities that is brought about by the pandemic itself, well, the pandemic has actually demonstrated the importance of cybersecurity. We should actually rethink about our risk appetite and work processes, as what Tammy has mentioned earlier, as we all embark on digitalization and remote working arrangement. Well, all this has actually changed our risk posture. Businesses now allow staff to be able to access their network and certain secure databases through their home network. Well, such an arrangement actually presents opportunity for cyber criminals to get into the network itself. So we really need to think about this because we have not really planned for this in the past. So digital and tech roles will also continue to be in demand, not just within the ICT sector, but also across the rest of the economy as all sectors look for digital solutions. Well, most importantly, police also need talents who understand cybersecurity fundamentals, information system or related discipline to become investigators as well as digital forensic examiners as crimes now, including traditional crimes, move online. As we have seen earlier and through the examples that I've actually shared earlier, the career opportunities are not just limited to technical jobs. The pandemic has shown that a lot more could be done in the areas of education and outreach in the cybersecurity domain as well. So if you have the relevant background and skills in this domain itself, in the industry, you can also branch out in these areas as well. So I hope that in this short sharing, you are able to see from a law enforcement agency's perspective how things have been affected Singapore as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Connie. That sounds like another call to arms. And I heard you saying that this has to be a whole of government approach. But, I think since we're all in this smart nation together, the regular people on the street have to kind of like stand up and be counted as well. So I'm curious as to how, you all managed that very steep learning curve in the first 6 months of this year, but maybe we'll revisit that in the question and answer. So right now, I would like to invite Ambassador Nathalie Jasma to share her perspectives from the Netherlands. Thank you very much for calling in this morning. And Nathalie, please.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all. And please let me start by thanking Singapore and Canada for partnering with the Netherlands on this event. And thank you to all involved from the Cybersecurity Agency as well. And a big thanks, of course, for today's moderator of this panel, Ms. Yi-Ling Teo, for your great preparation of the panel, and to all speakers. I recently started my tenure as the Dutch Ambassador at Large for Security Policy and Cyber. and I'm a so-called cyber diplomat. Our job is to negotiate international agreements on what we call the rules of the road. That is rules about what is acceptable behavior, what is not, and how do we make sure that we can all keep our promises of responsible behavior. A lot of this work revolves in and around multilateral institutions, such as the United Nations, where the Netherlands, as a leading digitalized society, has a strong interest in multilateral solutions. Clearly, the pandemic has been a cause of changes in all of our lives, and previous speakers already described that clearly. If you had asked me a year ago about my job, what it entails, I would have described my new job as a global journey involving many virtual issues. In contrast, as the COVID-19 pandemic has spread and affected all of us, my job has turned into a virtual journey with a lot of video conferences involving many pressing global issues. Let me first highlight a few opportunities and challenges that have come to the fore during this pandemic before outlining 3 key responses in the Netherlands cyber diplomacy. In terms of opportunities, the impact of COVID-19 has accelerated the existing trends towards digitalization. The perspective from Singapore was just given. We've seen the same in the Netherlands, of course. Remote working and online learning, online retail, and digital governance. And we expect clear economic benefits from the adoption of digital technologies in the Netherlands, where already before COVID-19, digital activities accounted for over 8% of our economy. But if we want to continue reaping these benefits, we need to similarly acknowledge risks and engage in risk mitigation. State and non-state actors alike have exploited the COVID-19 crisis by sending phishing emails. The previous speakers elaborated on that, so I'm not going into all those details. But what is very important to also to hold people accountable and stakeholders accountable is that we need to condemn these activities, and states need to do that. And the Netherlands and the European Union have condemned such activities. In addressing these issues, my work as a cyber diplomat connects a number of different tracks, and I will mention 3 today. The multilateral norms development, diplomatic responses, and capacity building. Firstly, agreeing upon shared norms and principles of responsible state behavior in cyberspace is a priority. Given the transboundary nature of cyberspace, this is an objective that cannot be separated from international cooperation on the rules of the road for an open, free, and secure cyberspace. International cooperation on norms and principles takes place in different UN processes. We work closely with our partners in the EU, in ASEAN, and the wider world to highlight the importance of applying the existing international rules-based order in cyberspace. In the open-ended working group on ICT security, that's the UN open-ended working group, the Netherlands, together with other states, has explicitly proposed to consider the healthcare sector protected as critical infrastructure. On a similar footing, we consider the public core of the internet, as well as the technical infrastructure for elections, to be covered by the existing group of governmental expert norm of not attacking critical infrastructure. And there is growing support for these kind of ideas in the UN. And this is a sign that gives me hope. It's a sign of our collective ability to build towards a norms-based cyberspace. Then secondly, the diplomatic response. We recognize that the multilateral development of norms is not a silver bullet in itself. Consider this, for some actors nowadays, breaking the norm seems to be the new norm. And so norms need to be upheld. This is not a thought experiment. In the last few years, we have seen multiple instances of irresponsible state behavior in cyberspace, ranging from election interference to the hacking of international organizations. And within the EU, concrete action has been taken to create a cyber sanction mechanism to target entities and individuals responsible for malicious cyber operations. And let me underline that the sanction mechanism is proportionate and necessary, is not targeted at any particular state, and has a robust legal basis. And this year, 6 individuals and 3 entities have been sanctioned for engaging in cyber operations with a significant disruptive effect. And my third topic is capacity building. We engage in capacity building efforts. The gains of cyberspace are not equally distributed. And with 50% of the world population still having no access to the internet, there is a huge global connectivity gap, which has increased during the pandemic. Moreover, in an interconnected world, weak ICT security in some will amplify vulnerability in all of the others. In that light, the Netherlands established the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise, which has matured into a strong public-private capacity building foundation. And the Netherlands works together with the GFCE Secretariat on establishing a Women in Cyber Capacity Building network. And I could say a lot more about my work as a Dutch cyber diplomat, but I will stop here so we have more time for a Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalie. And interesting points of view from the UNGGG and OEWG. That is a hard road. Those are hard roads and very interesting conversations, long conversations. I'm fully aware of those. So finally, and certainly not least, we have Miss Nicola Hudson to weigh in. Nicola, tell us what it's like, from the UK.
Yes, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm really delighted to be here, and particularly at joining you for the Singapore conference. Our relationship with the CSA is extremely important to us, not only as a trusted partner on lots of operational issues, but helping to develop those cybersecurity standards and regulations and international cyber policy that we've just heard are so important to all of us. So if I look back on the COVID crisis, in the UK, we have seen that the overall levels of cyber attacks have remained pretty stable. But we are definitely seeing huge more scams related to COVID, rather than what we were seeing 6 months ago, tax rebate scams, for example. We've seen that what we talk about as our critical national infrastructure that at the NCSC we work hard to protect has now expanded to a much wider CNI to include pharmaceuticals, think tanks, universities, healthcare, food, retail, logistics to keep the country going. And we've also very recently with our partners in the States and Canada published an advisory regarding Russian cyber actors, commonly known to many of you as APT29, who have targeted organizations involved in coronavirus vaccine development. So we do know that malicious actors are always going to keep looking for those opportunities, right? We've seen it across the ages to further these cyber aims. And unfortunately, what we have seen with the COVID crisis is this is no different. As Connie also noted when she was talking, we have seen that increase in scams using phishing emails that claim to have a cure for the virus, looking for donations to bogus medical charities. And many of our citizens have found that clicking on that bad link has led to malware infections and loss of data and stuff. So as long as this crisis continues, these threats are going to continue, but they're going to continue to evolve. And that's our job, to keep ahead of where these threats are coming from and put in place things to help protect our nation and our citizens. In terms of actually dealing with all these new threats, within the NCSC, we created 4 new pillars of work, as well as continuing with our day job. The 4 pillars are guidance, for people on how to work and study from home safely. All of the speakers have noted this massive change and what we need to do as cybersecurity professionals to help them. Another pillar is around combating the cybercrime related to COVID. A third pillar is defending our National Health Service in this time. And the fourth is protecting that ever-expanding C&I, the vaccine research and university and supply chains we talked about. So in terms of what we have tried to do here, when the coronavirus hit, we, like many organisations, made that move to remote working. One of the biggest things that we put out is 16 new pieces of advice and guidance, for instance, on our website. There's a home working guide, secure use of video conferencing for both businesses and individuals, secure home working on personal ID, IT, and advice on dealing with suspicious emails, phone calls and text messages. And we also tried to provide more targeted support, for example, to small businesses who are moving very rapidly from that physical to an online operating model. The priority around supporting our National Health Service was around ensuring resilience to any sort of cyber incident, which covered a whole suite of technical measures to shore up the network defences, for instance, monitor the cyber threats, to roll out an active cyber defence service, which we'd already built 2 specific NHS trusts across the country. We were also looking to take down over 10,000 related websites related to COVID scams with our commercial partner Netcraft. And it was also the catalyst for the launch of something that we had worked on, which we call our SIRS, Suspicious Email Reporting Service, which since the coronavirus has received over 2 million reports from the public, which has led to over 22,000 malicious URLs being taken down or blocked and over 9,000 individual sites taken down. So again, something we had worked with, but we got out really quickly because of COVID and what it was doing in terms of the threat landscape. We've also done a lot in terms of pioneering discovery tradecraft to hunt for threats across 1.4 million NHS endpoints, and really worked hard to increase the information we share with our partners on the potential compromises, using what we find and getting it out to people who need it. Over 75,000 indicators of compromises to healthcare organisations have been shared to help them defend and mitigate the threats that they are seeing. The fourth pillar is around engaging with the research community and the pharmaceutical sector on helping them defend on their vaccine research, the manufacture and distribution. And that will continue throughout and is a main focus of the work. If I move on though, as many of the other speakers have all said, that there have been opportunities that we have seen. And firstly, I hope we're all agreed that during this crisis, tech has been a real hero for us all. It has kept us able to work in completely new ways, maybe, but we have all worked with huge amounts of impact, and it has helped us all immeasurably in our social lives. It didn't fall over, even with the huge extra demand. And we pretty much avoided some massive security disasters that could have happened despite huge upheaval on the systems. So that is something to be celebrated, the role of technology in our lives. It's also brought about a huge diversification in our relationships, both with industries who are now essential to the UK's response, you know, the supermarkets, the haulage companies, ventilator manufacturers, healthcare suppliers, charities, sectors that we would help but more at arm's length have become really critical to this country's work in this area, as well as working even closer with international partners, Singapore being one of those, where partnerships are key to us all working together to help support everybody involved in COVID. We've also seen a huge increase in our education courses, many of them for girls, just this year, we've had a 60% increase in the number of girls doing our online courses. Everything has gone virtual, which has allowed many more people to do them, and a huge diversification in across our regions in terms of who's doing them, which is brilliant. There's we're looking at rolling out some of the courses to even our teachers who are teaching our students about their own cybersecurity and the messages to give to children. So a lot has been done, a lot more still to do, and I look forward to some of the questions that will come. But thank you.
Wonderful, Nicola. Thank you so much. That's an interesting perspective from the UK. I'm seeing the questions come in. So the question that I had for the four of you, I will hold till the end. And I am going to start stitching questions together that I'm seeing coming on Slido. And I have one question here, which I like, and I'm going to sort of like stitch it together with this other one. Shadow IT has been an accelerating issue and a cause for vulnerability. What kind of security baseline and governance can be improved? And I'm going to link that with how do we make people ready, for digital transformation? And, what is the strategy to get people out of their comfort zone to make it work? Because I think some of us on this panel will understand the acronym PEPCAC. Problem exists between keyboard and chair, which is person. So could I ask maybe Tammy and Connie to take these two questions? To start us off.
Could I go first?
Yeah, sure.
Right. Sorry, Connie. You want to go first, Connie?
I'm fine. Tammy, you can go ahead first.
Right. Okay. So shadow IT, I mean, that has always been a big problem for IT departments, right? A lot of time it's about visibility. And within the network, of course, you can see everything, but the moment the employee, it's outside of your network, then that's the problem, right? People downloading applications that are not supposed to, they're accessing, company data from their own devices and so on and so forth. Well, of course, there are a few things that you can do from system control level, right? What is very popular is controlling the applications that you can download onto your company issued devices, right? That in a way would help to eliminate some of the vulnerabilities that you might introduce in the process of downloading malicious apps, right? So there are already solutions out there where you can do application control, for example, right? But I think, and even on a mobile phone, right, you can similarly restrict them in terms of downloading apps and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I think it also ties back to that second question, right, which is how do you get people out of the comfort zone? So I think user awareness is like, the most important thing here, right? We always say that the users are the weakest link. Like it or not, you can spend a lot of money, huge investment in preventing the bad things from happening, building a wall so tall. But at the end of the day, you might have a very sloppy user and just click on a link and, introduce malware into the company, right? What can you do about it? So I've always believed that user education is very important. So even within our company and when we advise our clients, we do advocate, user education, right? The awareness activities must continue. You don't do it once and forget about it. Ideally, we would like to do it like once every quarter. And that's the constant reminder to remind employees, look, it's the actions can lead to very, undesirable consequences. They need to understand that. And protecting the company, it's as good as protecting themselves, right? So that concept is very important. You can have, the best processes, the best guidelines, the best governance in place. Or it takes just one user, right, not following a rule, and that's it, right? So that's why I thought we should not give up on this journey of educating the users, letting them be aware, the consequences, so we don't give up on this fight, right? And I'm a big advocate when it comes to user education, and I think that should be the way to go, right, to fix the problems. Yeah.
Okay,
Connie?
great. Thanks. Connie, anything to add from your perspective? How have you all tried to educate people or...
Well, all right. I think what I'm going to say is going to echo what Tammy has actually mentioned earlier. It essentially boils down to the education of the users itself. So unless you're going to air gap your systems, I think you're not going to step away. You're not going to get rid of this shadow IT problem at all.
No.
So I think on top of really there are many measures, for example, whitelisting, having certain approved applications that could be used. Those are actually quite useful. Essentially, it's really sometimes you might want to consider from the perspective of your staff, from the users itself. I think I mentioned earlier in my sharing that I think we actually move our businesses and our work online in a very short time when we move into the circuit breaker. So these things that we didn't really consider beforehand, and because of that, the employees doesn't have the environment and support to do what they usually do in the office environment and network. That is why they have to rely on unauthorized applications to carry out their work effectively. So essentially, it's really, we probably have to really think about with the new pandemic situation, what is our risk posture? Are we willing to really increase our risk appetite to accept this applications that is deemed to be perhaps maybe used dangerous? That is something that we really have to consider. One of the other thing that I think I find it very useful is really doing audits as well, to really check on whether there are unauthorized use of certain unauthorized applications as well. I think it would be good actually if you could, besides educating your staff and employees, you could probably tell them actually what are the list of approved devices, approved applications that he could use. This really helps to make things easier for everyone. I think one of the other thing is really to make sure that employees know that jailbroken devices are really prohibited. I think that is actually very important. Yeah, in terms of education wise, I think, well, I mentioned about audit. I think the results of the audit is never intended to shame anyone. It's really in the spirit of learning and to really improve how things work. I think we need to really bear that in mind, so that hopefully this will actually tackle the problem in a very more effective way and constructive way.
Thank you, Connie. Natalie, Nicola, any insights from how this issue is being dealt with in both your respective countries? Nicola, you mentioned 16 advisories on the website. Would any of these have covered this issue?
Yes, many of them, and I think we come from a point where it is critical to build that trust in technology, from citizens all the way through to SMEs to government. Without trusting technology for such a digitally connected country, like all of the countries here, Netherlands, Singapore, it's going to go wrong. And so we have a new, what we call a cyber aware public campaign going out in November to just help the public get some of the basics right, whether it's passwords or backup. At the same time, there's the Active Cyber Defense Programme doing some of the stuff for them to take away the bad stuff, the sites and stuff, so they don't have to worry if they click on a link, their life savings are going to go. And then with that, allows us the bandwidth to concentrate on the really tough things, the protecting the CNI from state actors with more targeted campaigns and the scams that are just being spewed out against the public. So there's lots and lots of things, but we try and kind of, if things are going wrong, if people are kind of circumnavigating the things that we put in for security, then we've got it wrong. We've got to make it easy for people to be secure, and then we can concentrate on the bigger threats.
Great, thank you. Natalie, any insights?
Yeah, apart from the education to the broader public, what we have done is our operational governmental cyber agency, they have very close links to all the organizations that are part of our critical infrastructure. And of course, when they face issues, they have a direct line with them. They communicate, they're in very close contact with one another, but also organizations that are not necessarily part of that critical infrastructure that face cyber challenges can give them a call. And then, of course, they can be referred to either commercial parties, or if it's really sort of too much that nobody can handle it, the government agency can step in. And we've seen that in a couple of cases that were also in the media. I think a lot has been done in terms of every single organization in raising awareness. I see a lot of sort of internal PR campaigns like don't click this, don't do that, do check that. Also sort of exercises that, for example, the ICT security department is sending out a test to see how people react on it and to see whether they actually click on something that is fake, in order to educate people and to make them realize how sensitive this all is.
Great, wonderful. I think, ladies, would you agree with me? And I got the sense, maybe earlier, much earlier in this whole pandemic, when everybody was suddenly dispersed to our homes and other places for work, basically getting away from the office, getting away from your corporate sort of branded security, getting away from IT support who kind of wanders around and says, is everything all right? Has the role of the CSO and the CISO changed? And I feel that it has. I feel that they've had to learn a lot, and suddenly they're the most important person on the board. And those are it happened very quickly, where maybe it was something that wasn't always yes, we see you there, and you're always talking about scams and phishing, but suddenly it's become very real. So in the little bit of time that we have left, I would like to kind of like ask the four of you, just one thing that you have faced in the last 9 months of going through this pandemic, in the jobs that you have, in the work that you do. What has been one really difficult decision that you've had to make? Can we start with Nicola, then Natalie, Connie, and then Tammy?
The difficult thing, I think, has been about how we continue to operate with impact across all parts of our mission, whilst pivoting the resources to a COVID mission, and as a leader ensuring that we have the time to really ensure that the people who work with us are okay in what was a really fast-paced changing environment, that they were okay as somebody living on their own going into lockdown, that they were okay if they were having to shield, that they were okay because they were working at 12 o'clock at night because they were homeschooling and still feeling they had to work. So for me, that balance of the directorate continuing to have impact and continuing to learn a whole new mission, but also the personal kind of impact that it had on us all, and really trying to give people the space. And I think my biggest observation from that is, we had a huge amount of trust in our workforce to do the right thing. And that is what got us through, because they did. The impact and the way they worked and tried to operate and help each other was incredible. So, one of the things that comes out of this for me is, even more admiration for all the people I work for, and for the delivery that they did. But that was the difficulty, that balancing act.
Oh, that's wonderful. That is so good to hear. Natalie, from your perspective.
Yeah, I recognize what Nicola just described, and also the way our organization dealt with that. My personal experience and a decision that was already taken some months ago, pre-COVID, and that was my appointment as ambassador, and to start a new job. For everybody starting a new job, of course, you need to understand the substance, but that's normal. But then there's also the human element, and you want to get to know your colleagues, you want to get to know the people you have to work with, build up a relationship that is crucial to do your work. And that is very, very difficult, I think, on just video conferences. Yeah. And also in terms of diplomacy, of course, normally when we do, for example, these negotiations in the UN, we all go to New York or we go to Geneva, and we have the formal setting where we have our speaking points and we have our formal position. But then, of course, in order to come to some sort of consensus, you need to really understand each other. So you have to have a really good dialogue. And that is usually what takes place in the margins. So yes. When you go out and you get a cup of coffee, you ask your colleague, what exactly did you mean when you made that statement? And that is now lacking. So the whole international agenda is still continuing, but this effectiveness is really an issue, I believe. And if I may, just another observation, but that's more a private observation, and that is the online learning. It started, I mean, as a mom, I started to really question myself, how can we actually have an open, free and safe internet for the next generation? And am I willing to have my kids share all this information on a platform hosted by the school? And do I believe that that is sufficiently secure and that it is the same kind of safe learning environment as a school normally would provide? Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Natalie. Connie.
Yeah. Coming from our operational unit itself, I think the most important, the biggest impact is really that police officers are also not immune to the pandemic as well. Sure. So while we also have our various social distancing measures in place, one of the most important things that we really need to do is really manage our resources. Make sure that it's optimized. We have optimized use of our resources. Essentially, we have to calibrate our response to make sure that justice is still delivered, particularly during this period where we see a lot of cases happening and all that. Mm-hmm. And then this is actually very particularly challenging because we have staff who will also have spouses who were also working in the essential services industry. So they are also equally concerned as well about the pandemic. And I have to manage their well-being, emotional well-being as well. And that is also equally, and in order to do that, we have to look for creative and devise new ways to carry out our investigation. So I think we mentioned before, I think we have always talked about digitalization, bring things online, all that. But I think we have delayed that. And I think one of the good things that comes out, which to me, I think the good thing that comes out from this pandemic is it really forced us to really think about how we can work differently and push us out of our comfort zone to really adopt working online in a different way. Mm-hmm. So that itself is really one of the most important things that actually, or insights I have actually from this pandemic. Yeah.
Thanks, Connie. We salute you for your service.
Thank you.
Finally, Tammy.
Right. It looks like I'm the only person representing a commercial entity. So maybe I should inject some, commercialism in here.
Please.
So what is the most difficult? I wouldn't say that it's very difficult. It's kind of an easy decision for me. But the things that followed that decision was very difficult. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So when the cyber industry, I've said that, generally the cyber industry were not that impacted by this pandemic. You see new demands and the businesses and so on and so forth in new areas. However, my clients are impacted, right? Even though we are not impacted, the clients are impacted. So we have a different set of challenges altogether. Projects are delayed, the SCM, supply chain is delayed. We have different challenges that are presented by the clients, like extended payment terms and so on and so forth. So you can imagine it's a very bad time, or rather tough time, even for our business, right? So a very difficult, like I've said, not a difficult decision, a simple one is whether do we keep our people, continue to pay bonus, and continue to give them merit increment, right? So that was in our case, right, in Ensign, it was yes, everything was yes, right? So the decision was very easy. But what follows was very, very difficult. How do you convince the board, despite, the very soft numbers, not meeting the target, that we should still continue to pay bonus, that we should still continue to develop capabilities, that we should still continue to send our people for training. I think those are very tough, things that we have to do, right? Because we believe in talent, we believe in developing the people. And I thought during this time, it is the best time to upskill ourselves and send them for more training and certification so that they can be the best in their job, right? And all this costs money. So to me, it's, being very convicted and very resolved in believing that people are very true to us and very important to us. And we want to build the capabilities and, allow them to value add to themselves, to their, commercial worth, despite such difficult times. Yeah, so that's my 2 cents again, from the commercial sector.
Always good to hear different perspectives from across the board, and that's why we have, this range of speakers. So, you know what? It's just gone past the top of the hour. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have. Thank you for all your questions. So it just leaves me to thank all our speakers, Tammy, Connie, Natalie, and Nicola, for your time and for your commitment to this session. Panel 2 for Women in Cyber will be starting soon. Hopefully all of you will stay with us. In the meantime, keep well and stay safe. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Elaine. Thanks
a very
all.
Big thank you to our moderator and speakers for the insightful panel discussion.
Do you see me? Do you see me? Do you see me?
Our second panel discussion for the day discusses cybersecurity and the next generation.
Hey, no more video. Right? I don't see myself.
Okay, gone. Yeah.
Gone?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I don't see myself.
Welcoming our moderator, Professor Annie Koh, D3 Group Professor of Family Entrepreneurship and Professor of Finance, Vice President of Business Development at the Singapore Management University. She is also a member of the World Economic Forum Global Future Council on New Education and Work Agenda and chairs the Finance and Investment Committee of GovTech Board and the Asian Bond Fund II Supervisory Committee of the Monetary Authority of Singapore. She co-authored the book Financial Management, Theory and Practice, an Asia edition, as well as Financing Internationalization, Growth Strategies for Successful Companies, and author of a number of Asian family business cases and survey reports. Over to you, Professor Koh.
Thank you very much, Juliana, and a very good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to people from different time zones. I'm delighted to be here, and I think we are all very excited. We had a very good first panel that looked at how the women in cybersecurity reacted to COVID. And I was delighted actually that the segue into this second panel is spot on, because we are going to look at the next generation. And I've seen a couple of questions which is actually targeted on education. How do we build the new pipeline of talent? And SMS Sim-An has actually mentioned that cybersecurity professionals is a growing field. And as we get more digitalized, we definitely need to balance it with cybersecurity consciousness. So we have a fantastic panel. I have 3 wonderful panelists, and they actually represent both the public, private, as well as education sector. So in no particular order, I actually want to be up close and personal with all of them, but one at a time. So I'm going to ask Vicky to turn on her mic first. So I'm trying to use the full use of our timing because we only have about 45 minutes. So Vicky,
Hi, Annie. Hi.
Yay. Thank you very much, Vicky. So we talk about the next generation. I'm starting with you, seemingly the youngest, but all the rest of us are all young at heart. Now, the way I'm going to do this is almost like a Q&A, but leading you to a self-introduction. And I think your background is amazing. Second Lieutenant Vicky Wang, and she's the commander.
Senior Lieutenant Colonel.
Senior Lieutenant Colonel. See? So now you all know that we have been using old CVs, and likewise with me. So just now Juliana mentioned that I was chair of GovTech's Finance and Investment Committee. As of last week, I've stepped off GovTech board. So therefore, we really need to do revisions of our CV even as we talk. So thank you very much, Vicky. I think that's a wonderful title that you're carrying. But I think for many people in the audience, they are very curious. What exactly does your role in cyber operations do you do in the military?
Hi, Annie.
We let you answer.
Can you hear me?
Very good. I can hear you.
Okay. So when it comes to cyber operations in MINDEF SAF, I would say it's similar to other cybersecurity organizations. But what really distinguishes us, what sets us apart is the mission. So we support national security. For example, we have incident response teams that support SingCert. We also have cyber threat intelligence, cyber threat hunting capabilities that we provide early warning to potential cyber attacks to the nation. So yes, we also have people with hands on keyboard to protect our military networks. So that gives it the distinctive military flavor to it. We protect the networks connecting our planes, our ships, our tanks. But if you walk into our organization and take a look at what we do, you'll find that we do things like cyber monitoring, 24/7 monitoring of defense information infrastructure. We also do incident response. We also do things like threat hunting, forensics, all the good things that you expect of any cybersecurity organizations. But the key difference is in the mission.
Very nice. So I like the mission, and I know we will get a little bit more visibility afterwards when we ask you questions about the difference between C4X and DCX. But people are curious, you are a merit scholar, and what exactly did you study? Because I have parents asking me, what should our next generation study when they look at courses? So can you give us a little bit background on what did you study and when did you join MINDEF and how long have you been in there?
All right, thank you. When I joined the SAF almost 20 years ago, there wasn't really such a thing as cybersecurity. It wasn't really a thing. I think most people here would know that. My degree was I had triple majors in psychology, political science, and East Asian studies.
Hold that. All right, I needed that recorded. So many people would then say, wow, how did she do it? That pivoting. And what were the kind of training she had in the last 20 years that led her to the kind of roles that she has today?
Yes. So when I first joined the organization, I'm a signal officer by vocation. So they trained me in networks, in satellite communications, in servers and all the good stuff, right? So they put you through CCNA and the professional training. So I was also in the US training with the US Army for 4 months at Fort Gordon. So that is my foundation. My foundation.
Right.
But I think the wonderful thing about my experience in MINDEF SAF so far are the developmental opportunities that I've been provided with. So as the landscape has evolved, as we see cyber threats and what it means to national security, we started training our people. And not just me, but a lot of people have been pivoted to this new area. We started investing a lot in sending people for your CEH, your CISSP, your courses. And it's not something unique to me because I'm like you said, a scholar or because I'm commander of cyber defense group. But all my people, we send them for such courses because we realize that it's very important in this area that our people are up to speed in their skills, that they're professional. And we like to say that learning is operations. Learning is operations.
Right.
And that sums up my experience.
Yeah. And you mentioned that, you have a lot of notable past experiences, but can you just name one in your vocation in the military that really built you to where you are today?
I would say my best experiences in military has always been when I'm involved in operations. And the defining moment for me was when 5 years ago, I was commanding a unit that deployed networks for national events. So we were on 24/7 contingency operations, standby for contingency operations. And that's where I realized that, with every terrorist attack that happens somewhere in the world, the meaning of our mission. So now fast forward to where I am now, where I'm doing cyber defense. It is again as real as it gets. It's 24/7, there's no downtime. And I think that's what gets my unit, people in my ecosystem, that's what gets us excited, and that's where we find meaning in our job.
Right, thank you. So therefore, it's only natural, right, that this current panel discussion would resonate with you. If there is one thing about this panel that you want to get across throughout the conversation afterwards, what will it be, Vicky?
I would say don't hold back, for all those who are tuning in this panel because you are remotely interested in this. If you're a young lady out there who's good in math, good in science, curious about computers, don't hold back. Don't hold back. And we need people in cybersecurity. We need people particularly in defense, cybersecurity. And we need the brightest, regardless of your background or your gender.
Thank you very much, Vicky. That is a lovely way for me to dovetail to Heather. Okay. Heather, can we? Oh, yes. Hi, Heather. So, Heather, hello, good morning to you. Thank you so much. It's an unearthly hour in Toronto right now, but I think you feel so passionate about this topic. And, as you could tell already, the way I've been crafting the questions, I would really like to know, how is this role that you currently wear, the academic outreach leader in IBM Security in Canada, how was that crafted? How did you evolve into this role?
That's a really good question, Annie, and thank you for having me here today. My role didn't exist about 5 years ago. In fact, even up until 3 years ago, I was doing what I do part-time while acting also as a transformation project manager in IBM Security. I've been with IBM for over 30 years, and I spent much of my time actually in our supply chain organization. Like Vicky, my background really is not in cybersecurity, but I've been in tech my entire career. And, a big part of being an IBMer is continuously learning new things, reinventing yourself, evolving, right? And so that's essentially how I ended up working in IBM Security. I've always been very, very passionate myself about continuous learning, about it, bringing new talent into IBM. And when as well as, by the way, I have a very huge passion for diversity and inclusion, which IBM has a long history of commitment to as well. Right. And so when I moved into IBM Security and I learned of the extensive need for cybersecurity skills, not just in Canada, but around the world. And by the way, my role is actually global, although I am Canadian, I am an IBM Canada employee, my role is global. And as academic outreach leader, what I do is evangelize the need on behalf of IBM for more cybersecurity skills around the world and simply work to build cybersecurity awareness. But going back to kind of how my role came about, when I learned of the extensive need, as I said, for cybersecurity skills, and on top of that, the need for more women in cybersecurity, I began working in this area, as I said, part-time, helping our Global University Programs team, which is a corporate team that offers academic resources to academic institutions around the world and non-commercial research institutions. And so, I mean, the bottom line is it was a blank piece of paper. The role that I have started out as a blank piece of paper, and I've grown this role over the past several years, all based on need in the industry.
So how big is the need? Because, we hear from SMS that this is a growing area and we need to retool and reskill a lot of people. And just now in the earlier panel, COVID has accelerated everything. So if you were to put your finger on it, how big is the need? Because I've noticed that you're on a lot of different advisory councils. You're trying to touch women, and you're trying to get your current employees, and you're also going back and upstream to have IBM Cyber Day for Girls. So is there a size? How big is this need?
Well, I mean, there are so many reports on the need for cybersecurity skills and the number of open and unfilled jobs. So it all depends what report you read. One of the latest reports indicates that the number of open and unfilled jobs around the world is in the neighborhood of 3.5 million. So, I mean, this is an industry or a profession with negative unemployment, clearly a lot of opportunity. And when it comes to women, the percentage of representation of women in cybersecurity is historically lower than, on average around the world, than that of other STEM related fields. So, we definitely need more women because we need greater greater thought leadership at the table, which leads to greater innovation. So when it comes to, there are so many things that we, as, myself as an industry professional and my colleagues in the industry can do, I believe, to build this awareness around the need for cybersecurity skills and simply for cybersecurity awareness amongst all people, in fact. And one of those things that we all can do is give back by participating on advisory boards. So as you mentioned, I do sit on a number. I was just asked again yesterday if I would sit on another board, but of course one individual only has so much time to give back. So I rely on a lot of other IBMers to fill needs as I get incoming requests to sit on an advisory committee or a board or engage in a speaking opportunity like this. I will often call on my colleagues to fill in. I can give you a couple of examples of advisory committees. So I sit on a program advisory committee at a local college for an emerging technology program. I sit on advisory board at the University of Guelph for their Masters in Cybersecurity program, Masters in Cybersecurity and Threat Intelligence. I also, from a nationwide perspective, sit on TechNation's Cybersecurity Talent Alliance, as well as ICTC's Cybersecurity Youth Leadership Council. So as you indicated, these boards or these programs, they span various ages, including youth, and that's because the need for this awareness that we're talking about spans all ages, frankly. And we need to get to young people to help them understand that we need them to work in cybersecurity, and that there's lots of opportunity here. But we also need to continue investing in people who are already working in the industry, which we haven't even really done. Vicky talked a little bit about training opportunities in her area. And then we also need to help people reskill. And, there are lots of people who are mid-career who are looking to pivot into an area like cybersecurity where there is a lot of opportunity.
And we will come to that. That's a critical question that I will really address in a little while. But I'd like to go to Mrs. Tan Chen Kee. And can Chen Kee turn on the mic? Can you hear us? Good.
Hello.
Hi, thank you so much. I was delighted that you're vice principal of a school and a principal of Crescent Girls School. But instead of me reading your CV, Chenki, can you share with us, all right, your current role in MOE is actually Divisional Director of Curriculum Development Division. How does that relate to cybersecurity?
Okay, hi. This is where I clarify. Actually, my current role is Divisional Director of the Student Development Curriculum Division. That's a whole mouthful.
Okay.
What is it that we do in the division? Let me take a deep breath. We work with physical education, sports, outdoor education, arts education, character development, national education, guidance areas like student mental well-being, cyber wellness, education and career guidance. We also work with CCA policy. So in a nutshell, I would call it all the fun stuff of school.
I love it. And yet cyber is embedded in there.
Yes, cyber is very deeply embedded in that and has become very much an area of great focus. And we have enhanced a lot of things we do in cyber quite a bit. So cyber wellness is a key issue and a key area that we're working on and that we've enhanced. And I will talk a little bit more about that later.
Yes. How did your past experience and your portfolio add value to what you are doing today?
Well, in my past lives, I started actually as a biology teacher by training. So I'm a teacher at heart.
Yeah.
I asked Annie not to call me Mrs. Tan because it makes me feel old.
And also say cannot call me Professor Annie. Mutual agreement.
Yes. And part of the reason why I'm in education is that part of me wants to remain young at heart. So that's why we're in education. But I started as a biology teacher. After a number of years in a junior college, I actually moved on to spend some time in the Ministry of Education on educational technology. And there I had a hand in developing some of the work to do with the use of technology in the classroom, specifically the Future Schools program. After that, I went overseas to do some graduate work in learning, design and technology. And then I moved on to be a vice principal in primary school and then 5 years as a secondary school principal of a girls' school. So I am very much in touch with technology and very much in touch with growing the next generation, and that remains my passion.
Very nice. And where do you see this conversation that we are having today, all right, where, you feel you really need to get the point across? I meant to ask Heather that earlier, but I can answer later.
Well, just to share, I've put on multiple hats in my professional journey. I am a user of technology. That means I'm a geek at heart. I am a creator with technology, practitioner, dabbled with research, a policy maker. But ultimately, I see my professional journey as one of influencing young lives and building a generation. And that is what today's panel conversation is about.
Right.
We heard from the earlier panel on the need to educate users, on the need to actually change behavior, get people to have a bigger picture of practices and implications. And it starts with education and it starts with the young. And this is what I want to bring to this panel.
Very nice. So now I'm going to do a second round because the questions are coming in and I'll get to the questions in a while. So I'm going back to Vicky. So Vicky, educate us. Yeah. So this is a panel, all right, which needs some education. What is the difference between your uniform C4X and the non-uniform DCX role? And what's your experience in both of those tracks?
Okay, so DCX stands for Defense Cyber Experts, and it is a civilian scheme. And your C4X is a military scheme. And I think the bulk of our jobs in MINDEF SAF when it comes to cybersecurity can be done by our civilian DCX. But then when it comes to wartime, when it comes to war fighting operations, it becomes really critical that you integrate your cyber defense operations with the war fighting operations. And this has to be done by the military, the uniformed personnel. And that's why there's a need for C4X, so that when you have your war fighting, it can go on uninterrupted even in the face of cyber attacks. And you need these professional cyber defenders who understand operations, understand what your Air Force, Navy, and Army people do, so that they can execute the mission together.
Very nice. And, I was very excited about 2 years ago when the government actually introduced the National Service Cyber Vocation, Yeah, you want to share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah. And so I think this ties in with what I said about that this is an organization that really values training and providing learning opportunities. So what we've done with the Cyber NSF scheme is that we have rounded up all our young men enlisting into national service who are good, has an aptitude for cyber defense, put them through selection tests, and we seek them out and we provide them with more training in-house so that they can be our hands-on keyboards warriors running our networks. So essentially, and part of it is we also provide them with university training. So if they sign on with us as part of this scheme, they will be sent to SIT or NUS, depending on what they prefer, for the universal training. So for university training, so they can either take up 3 years or 4 years, and part of their on-the-job experience counts for their curriculum.
So then that's a challenge for women, right? Because women are not in NS. I'm not suggesting that we do, all right? But
you can sign on as a regular.
Okay, and that nicely in a while dovetails with a question that Karun has just sent in, but I'll come to that in a while. So maybe as the organizational culture, Vicky, just now you said so much of your development and training happen on the job within the organization itself. Can you kind of share with us as a female officer, what actually had powered or, who had championed a lot of your development? I'm sure there are more than one mentor that you had.
Yes.
Can you share with us?
Yeah. So first of all, when you spoke about culture of the organization, I think that the one word that can define what is our culture, I would say, is mission focus. So it doesn't matter, and I think that's the beauty of our defense system, where we bring people from all walks of life together and we work towards a common mission. Right? It doesn't matter where you're from.
Yes.
And that has been my experience so far in organization, that it doesn't matter where you're from, what's your gender, people value you for what you can bring to the table.
Yeah.
And I've had the benefit of having several mentors. Given that we don't really have that many women in the military, I would say most of them are men. And they have supported me in terms of sending me for, like I said, the US training, for some of this training, sending me overseas as well to train with the New Zealand Defence Force for 10 months.
Yep.
Putting me up for promotion, like my current job.
Yes.
So I am very grateful. I feel that this is a place where people are recognized for their competency and their professionalism. So that's my experience.
Thank you very much. You just reinforced a strong belief that I have. Many of the women in leadership places got there because it's a lot of male champions as well, and not just female role models. And that's why I'm coming to Heather. So Heather, in what ways has IBM helped you in your current rotation to where you are? You said you started 30 years ago in operations, supply chain, right?
That's right.
So, I mean, much like Vicky just indicated about the culture in her vocation of, the need for continuous training. At IBM, continuous learning really is a part of our culture as well. It's ingrained in us as IBMers that we need to continuously learn new skills and even in some cases reinvent ourselves, much like IBM continues to reinvent itself and therefore has survived as successfully as a company for over 100 years. So within the you really don't have to go outside of the company to find learning opportunities. We have so much free employee training at our disposal, available online, much of it now in bite-sized chunks. If you've got 20 minutes to watch a video, you watch a video. If you've got all day to spend in a course, you spend all day. So there are so many different opportunities, not just in the type of education or the format of the education, but also the topic. So of course, they're not, the available training is not limited to cybersecurity. Naturally, we have training in blockchain, augmented intelligence, quantum computing, you name it. You just need to find something that you're interested in, that you want to learn about, and there are lots of opportunities for learning.
And today, I think individuals have very little excuses because you literally could go for online courses. Yeah. So yes. I want to hold a question that has just popped up on the screen, and I think any one of you could jump in here. So, one of the questions that had popped up earlier was, is there a need to push women interest in cyber? Maybe in statistics, it really looks like the low numbers, but it may seem male dominated. So what are the real factors preventing women to join this sector? Any one of you can jump in.
I'll jump in. So honestly, when it comes to preventing women, I would say that in many cases, we are our own worst enemies. And what I mean by that is that we have too much self-doubt. We have this misconception, because it historically has been a male-dominated industry, that it is only for men, that there is no place for women. And also there's a misconception out there that you have to have a computer science degree, or you have to have a specific cybersecurity certification like CISSP, which Vicky mentioned. And that, there's a misconception that everybody is a coder or a hacker. And that's just not the case. We have people of all different backgrounds. You heard Vicky's educational background and pardon me, Annie?
Yeah, liberal arts background.
Liberal, right. So my education is in business, and I have a degree in business and a degree in French. And here I am now talking, on a daily basis about cybersecurity. We have people in IBM security with degrees in history, in political science, in musical theater, for heaven's sakes, in former teachers, former lawyers. So not every, and of course we've got engineers and folks with computer science degrees, et cetera. My point is there's room for everyone, and what we need to do, and a lot of the work that I do is around dispelling all of those myths that I talked about, and helping women, particularly, young girls, realize that there are opportunities for everyone, and that we need you. We need you to work in cybersecurity and do the good work that we do.
Yes. So I think Rosabelle, we had two questions that are related to the biggest challenge, and I agree with Heather. We are our own worst enemies. Vicky, do you want to add on to that? Or Chenki? No. Okay, then I come back to Chenki. Chenki, what are the future jobs that you are actually preparing our next generation for? I think we both of us have this passion about, the future jobs, but we are actually talking about the future skills. Right? Chenki, all yours.
Well, I'm going to handle this question in three parts. And firstly, what we do in MOE is not just to prepare the next generation for future jobs.
Yeah.
What we first are committed to doing is to prepare our students for life, which includes jobs, but includes a lot of other things. And this is our primary commitment. So regardless of what the future of jobs looks like, we are committed to building strong fundamentals. And this is especially important as we see the impact of the COVID crisis in the past 8 months and the trends in technology use, in digitalization and the digital lifestyle. All of these things have not just become a part of our young people's lives, they have become so much a part of our lives. And life in the future really, really is very intrinsically tied with digitalization and technology. And how do we prepare our students for this kind of a life? And it's not just in the future anymore, it's the life now. So firstly, we are very focused on the fundamentals. And the fundamentals come back to the issue of values. Don't get me started on this, we will not end in time. And we need to focus on values. So you're right, it's not just about skills, it's not just about competencies, it's to anchor our young people on values. And beyond values, then is looking at how do we equip our students, our young people to be able to live out those values. And that comes to what we call social emotional competencies. How do we help them to be, with reference to technology, discerning and responsible users? How do we help them to mitigate the risks to their own safety and their own well-being? And all of this is what we do in what we call character and citizenship education, which prepares our students for life. And we just enhanced it earlier this year. And through these past 8 months, it's just become very apparent that this is crucial and it needs to anchor all the things we do in education. So that's the first part. But beyond preparing our students for life, we also know we want to prepare our students for the jobs of the future. And with reference to this, it's crucial to talk about digital literacies. Regardless of what job you engage in the future, digital literacies are crucial. And at the beginning of this year, of course, MOE launched our National Digital Literacy Program. And this provides a comprehensive roadmap to prepare our students for these jobs of the future. We launched it in March, but in the past few months, all of our plans have just been accelerated. And I think in June, my minister just spoke about the fact that we brought plans forward from what was meant to be fully delivered in 8 years' time to what we will already start doing this year and next year. And it shows us how important it is to imbue our students with digital literacies and competencies. So in a nutshell, our approach has 3 aspects: what goes on in the curriculum, what goes on in the classroom, in other words, the students' experiences, which means what goes on beyond the classroom, and of course the students' lifestyle. So across from primary school right up to post-secondary and the institutes of higher learning, digital literacies have been built into the curriculum, into the students' experiences, and into the students' lifestyle. Then the third aspect, preparing our students for their future jobs. So firstly, for life. Second, for jobs of the future. And thirdly, for the kind of jobs that they want. And this, in this current economy and current world, requires a lot of self-awareness. I think we all agree that a lot of times we talk to young people nowadays, they don't really know what they want to do in their lives, right? So what do you want to do? I want to do what my parents tell me. What do your parents want you to do? They want me to do what they've been doing. And they just bungle along their supposed career paths. So what we do in this aspect is what we call education and career guidance. And it is really about helping our young people embrace a mindset to learn for life and to equip them with adaptability and resilience so that regardless of what their future jobs are, and they would eventually know that they will not end up with just one job, there will be a variety of different jobs. The disposition is always that of constant upskilling, reskilling throughout the whole journey. And that's what we do in education and career guidance.
Good. And it dovetails nicely into a question from Toby. Toby says, when you think about youth in the cyber domain, what keeps you up at night? What are some of the best practices that you can share to address this challenge?
Well, many things keep me up at night. With reference to youth in the cyber domain, one aspect that really keeps me up at night is how we help them to use the technology or dwell in the cyber world and not abuse it and not be abused. And that's crucial, and that really is a cause for concern. We can no longer tell young people, don't go online. That's ridiculous. We spend our time online all the time. And during the circuit breaker period, the cyber world was all our window into what's happening in the world, because we were all confined to our homes. So we could no longer say, don't use it. And the cyberspace is a very powerful environment for learning, for growth, for development, and for doing good. Yep. And that's what we want to be able to help them to do. But there is that danger of tipping over from use to abuse. And the abuse part is something then that we also need to guard our students against, our young people against, to guard them against abusing the technology and to guard them against being abused. And hence, cybersecurity is crucial and is part and parcel of what we teach our students in school.
Wouldn't it be called cyber responsibility as well?
Oh, yes. Hence, I started my sharing with the need to anchor on values.
Yeah.
Because it's not just security, it's about responsibility. And it's not just about themselves, it's about the people they impact. You imagine if I'm just careless for a moment, I affect everybody else, either in my family, my community, my school, my organization. So it's a matter of imbuing in them a sense of responsibility. You're right. Yeah.
Are there other best practices that we could learn from? Up in Toronto, in Canada, Heather, because you also do something for Cyber Day for girls, you have a program.
Yes. So why don't I just start by talking a bit about that? So with our Cyber Day for Girls program, which we started 4 years ago, in fact, this Friday is the 4th anniversary of our very first Cyber Day for Girls, which was held here in Toronto. What we do is we aim to teach preteen and teenage girls about cybersecurity from two aspects. One is the personal, cybersecurity hygiene side of things, how to stay safe online, how to, avoid being bullied and whatnot. But the other side of things is building the career awareness. So we hope to open up some of the girls' eyes with respect to the opportunities in cybersecurity, like I was talking about earlier, because there's simply a lack of awareness. And, that lack of awareness amongst youth, not just young girls, but youth in general, stems in part because teachers and parents and guidance counselors are not all equipped to talk about cybersecurity themselves, and in particular to talk about the roles and opportunities that exist in cybersecurity. So, going back to a statement I made earlier about how we as industry professionals or professionals in cybersecurity who are working in the military, in government organizations, in nonprofit organizations, we all, I believe, have a responsibility to help educate our youth on, both sides of things, the personal hygiene, because cybersecurity is everybody's business, right? We recognize that not every one of the students that we reach through our program is going to end up working in cybersecurity. We all have different interests, different passions, and that's what makes the world interesting. But we all, as Chen-Ki said, we're all online every day, all day, right? So everyone needs to have that general cybersecurity knowledge, but we also aim to open their eyes about careers. You know, when I ask kids today what they want to be when they grow up, I get the typical answers that we all might have said as kids. I want to be a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, and those are great aspirations. But why are they saying those things? They say them because that's who they see as their societal role models. They don't. None of us go around. You know, we don't have titles as, you know, cybersecurity professional or, you know, and
well, right? After this session we will, okay, we need to brand, so we need to brand all of you, the wonderful jobs you're doing.
Right. So, you know, when I dream of you know, a day when I start off a Cyber Day for Girls event and I ask the girls what they want to be when they grow up, and at least one girl raises her hand and says, I want to be a cybersecurity professional. That, you know, I want that to be mainstream.
Right. So I'm watching the clock and I noticed there's one great question here. So I'm going to let all of you jump in. So, you know, we don't have time to keep building only the back end and the upstream. There are a lot of people who are losing jobs. Is there a way in which we could convert them? Is there a way in which, you know, we see this big gap between having cybersecurity talent and a lot of others who have come from different domain expertise? Is there no way in which we could retrain them to meet the needs? Any one of you? Any great ideas? Jump in.
I'll jump in. So there are a lot of transferable skills from other domains, right? I mean, in cybersecurity, we talk often about the value of curiosity, the passion for continuous learning, collaboration skills, communication skills, and you know, a lot of the technical skills, they can be learned. So if, you know, we highly encourage people who have either lost jobs or maybe, you know, they just need a change in their career to explore cybersecurity. As we talked about earlier, there's so much free online learning that you can engage in, but also a great way to get involved in learning about cybersecurity is to attend events like this, go to conferences, all of which are virtual right now, so you don't even have to leave the comfort of your home. You don't have to, you know, get on an airplane and travel somewhere. And another great way to get involved is by joining special interest groups. You know, there are so many out there to choose from, whether it's ISC Squared, or, you know, which provides a lot of learning opportunities. Obviously, that's their mission. Or it's women's organizations like Women in Cybersecurity, also known as WICIS. I mean, I could go on and on about the opportunities to engage in special interest groups and network and meet people in the industry and find mentors in those groups.
And I have to also mention that we have come up, the CSA has actually got professional conversion and development programs, and there's one specifically entitled Cybersecurity Professional Development Program. So for all those people who are interested, the gap can be filled up, and we definitely look forward to continuous learning. Vicky, I'm going to come back to you. So even with that background, with all the opportunities, when exactly do you know that cybersecurity is your calling? You are the role model, you know, that we're going to start to put you up, all right? To all our young ladies and young people, not just the ladies. Yes.
You know, if I can go back to the previous question about what really drives me in my job, I mentioned that it's about operations and doing real operations that gives you that sense of purpose. And I think when it comes to cybersecurity, it is as real as it gets. And when I see my team and people around me and how seriously they take their work, how much pride they take in their profession, continuously upgrading themselves, that's when I find that, you know, this is the place for me. And I always tell my guys that they should see themselves as no less than your special forces. Because, you know, they are the experts of your domains. They are highly qualified, highly skilled, highly trained to use very precise niche skill tools to do their work well. So yeah, that's where I draw my pride from, and that's where I find my calling.
Very nice. So I've been told, all right, I have to wrap up. So I'm going to wrap up with a closing question. And I'm going to start with you, Chen Ki. Yeah. So out there in the audience, we have a lot of people, all right, to all the youths and the individuals who wanted to know more about cybersecurity and delve deeper into the field. What is the one word of advice or one line of advice that you would give to them? I'll start with Chen Ki. Yes.
Maybe not one word, but 3 short phrases.
Love
One is be open. Don't rule yourselves out. Don't think you can't do it. Don't think that you don't have the competencies. Be open. Don't even think, oh, girls are fit for this, boys are fit for that. Actually, from this panel alone, you have come to appreciate that, I mean, the world is your oyster, so be open. Second is be curious. Find out. Don't wait around for if I'm talking to young people, don't wait around for your teachers to come and give you the information. Go get the information yourself. And young people need to stay and be curious. But third is be grounded. You know, as you seek, to know more about cybersecurity, to delve deeper into the field, as we had already agreed upon earlier on, it is not just the skills. It is about a sense of responsibility. It's about a sense of accountability. It's about a sense of duty to the nation. Right, Vicky? Duty to the nation? Yes.
And purpose, yeah, in your learning.
Yes, and purpose. So just these 3 things. Thank you.
Thank you, Chen Ki. And Heather?
I would agree with Chen Ki's statement about staying curious. So if I said it a little differently, I would say never stop learning. And if you haven't started learning about cybersecurity, start now. So if I could give an example, if you want to find some cybersecurity learning, honestly, all you have to do is search online for free cybersecurity education or free cybersecurity training. You'll find so many opportunities. So start there and never stop. Because as I said, cybersecurity is everyone's business. So, regardless of whether you think you might want to go into a career in cybersecurity, you need to learn about cybersecurity for your own personal safety.
Thank you very much. And your last word, Vicky?
I'll say the same thing. Don't hold back. Join us now.
Amazing panel. All right, I couldn't have said it better. I think all of you actually have introduced us to a new dimension, and I know the future looks bright because we have wonderful role models in each and every one of you. Thank you very much, and I'm going to hand this over to our MC. Juliana, all yours.
A very big thank you to our moderator and speakers for the thought-provoking discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the second edition of Women in Cyber. Please view the SICW program on the navigation bar to find out more about the upcoming programs lined up for you. Thank you and have a great day ahead.